back.
So I hope you had a good break. You ended up with a few extra minutes. I hope you did some shopping and some contributions. We are so grateful to have our colleagues from UNFPA, UNICEF, and UNICEF USA here with us today to update us on the progress made with each of the projects we funded this biennium. We are going to begin with a project in Papua New Guinea and Timor-Leste. Her health and dignity are priority. Please welcome to the stage Gilles Virgili. Who is the Strategic Partnerships Specialist for UNFPA.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you in person. And it's really great to be meeting all of you to celebrate the long-standing partnerships between Zonta International and UNFPA to expand gender equality and promote women empowerment. So today I'll specifically talk about our joint project in Timor-Leste and Papua New Guinea that aims to strengthen services for survivors of gender-based violence. I'll reflect on the progress we've been able to achieve since the start of the project in 2020 and what we hope to achieve in the years to come with your support as well. So if the presentation can be shown as well. Wonderful. So just to give you an idea of what the project aims to achieve, this is really with the objective of ensuring a life free of violence for women and girls in both countries. And it's especially important in those two countries that have shown to have the highest prevalence of gender-based violence among countries in the world. 2/3 of women report at some point of their lifetimes to have suffered from emotional, physical, or sexual violence, and most of the time at the hands of their intimate partner or husband. So, and sorry, I'm not sure how we switch. Is it this one? Wonderful. So we specifically work with the health service and the hospitals. Often they are the first point of contact of survivors of violence, but they are often ill-equipped to really provide the support, counseling, and the case management for women and girls who report having been affected by violence. We also work with all of the relevant authorities, whether it's the police, whether it's the justice system, social workers, or healthcare workers, to make sure that they have that ability to address in a multi-sectoral manner the cases of gender-based violence that are reported. Just a few words on this initiative. Both countries are implemented as well the European Union and United Nations Spotlight Initiative, but the support of Zonta International really helps us to reach the most underserved communities in both countries. And I'll tell you a bit more about the context in which we operate. We also know that the last few years have been very challenging. Obviously, the pandemic has caused big disruptions in day-to-day operations and activities. As Nankali also mentioned earlier, the pandemic has caused a rise in gender-based violence that we've seen in every context due to lockdown measures that have been putting women at risk within their homes and within the community, but also increasing unemployment and poverty. And we know that these are big drivers of violence against women. Both countries are also quite challenging contexts in which to operate. There were local elections in Papua New Guinea recently that have once again been the scene of political violence and disruptions. So these are contexts that are quite difficult, but with the support of Zonta International, we're really able to make strides, and our teams on the ground have been, despite the challenging environment, able to achieve great results that I want to present to you now. So in Papua New Guinea, We operate in the Mild Bay County, which is at the east of the country. Just to give you a bit of context, it's a county based of 600 islands. So women are really scattered within this area. It makes access to health services quite difficult, and often they have to travel long distances to be able to access centers. It's also a region with communities that speak 48 different languages, and you can imagine the challenges in providing information that is relevant and accessible to these women so that they know who to turn to and what services they can access in these contexts. So UNFPA in Papua New Guinea was able to work with family support centers. This is the Department of Health model to provide services to survivors. They're usually located at provincial and district level hospitals. So we've been working with those family support centers to be able to expand the range of services they provide. We've worked specifically with the different GBV service providers, whether it is against social workers or healthcare workers, on their capacity to handle, manage, and refer cases between the different sectors that provide support to survivors. And we've been establishing standard operating procedures in these contexts to make sure that cases are managed efficiently and effectively. And then lastly, we've developed a training package for healthcare workers, specifically on gender-based violence prevention. And I just wanted to talk about the story of Edna. She's one of our social worker in a family support center. She's been one of the first one to be trained on that new service package. And I think she really highlights an important point that before the training, often when cases were reported, workers didn't necessarily know how to register, assess, and close them. And so often they would just get stuck in the system, get forgotten. And women and girls that reporting that experience of violence would never get the support and services that they need and deserve. And with the training, they're able to manage those cases much more effectively and to make sure that there is closure and there is action that is being taken. And this is just an experience we wanted to reflect on in terms of our day-to-day worker in the center we operate. Similarly, in Timor-Leste, we're working with the health sector to provide services specifically in the Liquica municipality. So we train healthcare workers on gender-based violence and what their responsibility and the type of supports they can provide. We also really have a lot of community outreach activity, making sure that we develop specific information materials to raise awareness on the issue of violence against women in these communities, and we're able to address social norms and social stereotypes that fuel that violence. And we also completed activities to establish a safe space in that community. A safe space is basically a community center where women and girls can socialize, they can rebuild their social networks, they can receive a range of social support, but also skills building activities and development within these centers. And so now the work has been completed to be able to host one of those safe spaces in the Liquica facility itself. And I just also want to highlight Herculano's work. He's one of the community worker working both with healthcare professionals, but also within communities with all of the members. And I think he highlights the really important point that we need to address the social norms and the stigma that often survivors face when they try to report the violence that they experience, especially when it's violence within the homes and from the intimate partner. One of the survey that UNFPA conducted actually shows that 4 out of 5 women and men think that it is acceptable for husbands to hit their wives. And so we see how challenging that environment is when people think that violence within the home is not an issue, and that women that come to the front relating to the experience don't really have the right to do so. And so this really highlights the importance of continuing that community awareness work and really make sure that survivors have a voice and have a space for relating their experiences. So these were the results we were able to achieve since the start of the project in 2020. And what we hope to be able to do in the second phase in the next 2 years is really to expand, first of all, the reach of our activities. So to reach new regions. So in addition to Milne Bay that I've described before and Bougainville, we would operate in the Western province. And then this would give us access overall to populations of 500,000 people in those different regions. And so with the support of Zonta International, we would be able to really expand the type of actions that we have and the regions in which we operate. Similarly, in Timor-Leste, we would expand to the Lartem municipality and make sure that we're able to reach women and girls there. And then one of the second biggest priority in addition to the expansion is to make sure that we institutionalize those efforts within the government settings, that case management practices and training opportunities become really part of the Department of Health priorities, and that the governments are able to continue rolling out those interventions and build strong systems to prevent and respond to gender-based violence. So what we aim to achieve, as I said, is continue to work with the health ministries to make sure that the services they provide respond to the highest level of quality standards, but also that government officials at all levels, whether it's the local or the national, have the skills and the knowledge to be able to provide this information and support and counseling, but also that they're able to manage cases between the different sectors with responsibilities towards survivors of violence. So this is really what we hope to achieve in the next 2 years. I'm really grateful for the support that Zonta International has been providing to the work of UNFPA for many years, whether it's around child marriage, as we heard before, or now specifically on gender-based violence in 2 very challenging and very difficult countries. But we hope with your support to continue increasing the help that we provide to survivors and that we're able to address the human rights violation that gender-based violence poses for women and girls' development. So with this, I would like to thank you and looking forward to engaging with you today, tonight as well. And I've had the pleasure to meet some of you this morning already and to express my gratitude to Zonta International and all the members for the support you've been provided to UNFPA for many years now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Giaz. This project is proposed to continue in the 2022-2024 biennium. Do we have a motion? I recognize President-elect Ute.
I'm Ute Scholz, President-elect of Zonta International and Zonta's Foundation for Women. I move to accept her health and dignity, our priority, a project in cooperation with UNFPA for the 22-24 biennium to be funded by a grant of $750,000 from the Zonta Foundation for Women International Service Fund.
Is there a second to your motion?
I'm Florence Fischer-Herber, Zonta International Director, and I second this motion.
It has been moved and seconded to accept her health and dignity, our priority, a project in cooperation with UNFPA for the 2022-2024 biennium to be funded by a grant of $750,000 from the Zonta Foundation for Women International Service Fund. Is there any discussion? I see no one at the mic, although Ute, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Madam President. It's a pleasure for me to explain why I recommend this project. We heard about the success. We also heard that was a hard biennium with COVID. In spite of this situation, the project ran well, and I had the opportunity to attend an online site visit in Papua New Guinea and to see really on site what they are doing in this project. We had conversations with the social workers there and with the people who benefit from this project. And additionally, I think I don't like the idea to jump into a project and jump out in the next biennium and to go to the next. I think we have a lot of trust, and we could see the people in Papua New Guinea that they have so much hope in that what Zonta International is doing for them. And I think they're working very well, and they have a good chance, and they should have the opportunity to continue this really good work and this really good project in the next biennium, so that they really have show effect for the women in Papua New Guinea, one of the countries with the most violence against women in the world. Thank you.
I see a speaker at the pro mic.
My name is Hasna Moudud, District 25, Dhaka, Club 1. I wish to support this motion. It is a very important area of concern. I'm very familiar with East Timor, but not so much with the Timor here represented. This is a very war-ravaged country, and the speaker mentioned it is bilingual and bicultural. And I'm wondering if it is also by religion. It is a diversified area. This is an example of how we can help in very crucial small areas to achieve Zonta goal and further, and you are encouraging it to go on. I support it fully, and I thank you for this initiative. Thank you.
So I see no one else at the mics. Are you ready with your vote? Yeah. You pulled it out. You remember yesterday? So we know that a 1 is yes and a 2 is no for adoption of Her Health and Dignity, Our Priority for the 2022-2024 International Service Project. Please vote now.
No.
99.0% yes, 1% no. 1,020 yes and 10 no. There is a majority in favor, and the motion is adopted. The next project is adolescent health, girls' health and protection in Peru, which I was very fortunate to visit just in the last month for our site visit. Please welcome Manzi Meda, Director of Global Cause Partnerships for UNICEF USA, to the stage to hear more about this project. Manzi.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It was such an honor to be on the program visit with you and the rest of the Zonta delegation just a few weeks ago. I want to start by saying that it is just such an incredible honor to be here with all of you. I started managing this partnership with Zonta in 2020. So this is my first time being able to see so many of you in person and to get to meet all of you in person as well. And it's an even bigger honor as we stand here today celebrating 50 years of partnership between Zonta International and UNICEF USA. The impact that we have had together has been incredibly powerful, creating change for women and girls around the world. I'll also start by saying that UNICEF USA's role is unique because our role is to support UNICEF's work through fundraising, awareness raising, and advocacy efforts. We work with partners to ensure that together we are impacting child survival and well-being around the world. As Sharon just mentioned, we had the opportunity to travel in person together to visit the program in Peru and see firsthand the impact that Zonta is having. I'll be touching on the program visit throughout my presentation. So we know that there are significant inequities based on gender, age, geographical location, ethnicity, and income, and many of these persist for adolescent Peruvians. Being an adolescent female, Indigenous, and living in a rural area makes these inequities even more significant. Prior to the pandemic, Peru actually saw progress for adolescent care. During the pandemic, however, adolescents, especially girls, have been particularly neglected compared to other population groups. With the extended lockdown, continued school closures for over 2 years, and limited access to other healthcare and protection services, this pandemic has caused significant setbacks in all aspects of programming around the world. As you can see from this slide, adolescent pregnancy is particularly high in Peru, and it's especially high in rural areas as well. Mental health issues and violence are also high. 6 out of 10 children have experienced physical and psychological violence at school in Peru. 7 out of 10 children have experienced physical and psychological violence at home. So that's where this project, Adolescent Girls' Health and Protection in Peru, comes in. The overall objective of this program is to improve the capacity of services in Ucayali and Huancavelica. Ucayali is the rainforest jungle region of Peru, and Huancavelica is the mountainous Andes region of Peru. So as you can see from the slide, the primary focus areas are prevention of violence in schools and communities, access to healthcare support, including mental health services, training of service and care for educators and healthcare workers, as well as the development of policy and national guidelines. In the 2020 to 2022 biennium, Zonta committed $1 million to support adolescent girls in Peru. Together with Zonta's support, the impact that we have achieved can be summed up through 2 outcomes. Outcome 1 is the improved response of the health sector, with an emphasis on mental health care and violence prevention in conjunction with other services. Outcome 2 is the improved response of the protection and education sectors to promote health and address all types of violence in schools in a timely manner. So what does this actually mean? So let's break it down. If we take a look at the health sector, which is outcome 1, progress to date includes the strengthening of essential adolescent health services, reaching 13,408 adolescents, of which 8,534 are girls. That's during the pandemic and with the significant setbacks that we have faced. The development of national guidelines for online mental health care counseling for children, adolescents, and caregivers was also something that occurred in this past biennium. The National School of Public Health launched a virtual course for health personnel on the provision of online mental health counseling in the context of school reopening and the return of face-to-face classes. The virtual phase of this program successfully trained 169 health personnel. Now, if we take a look at the education sector, progress to date includes the Ministry of Education integrated the School Violence Prevention Guide developed by UNICEF into its national strategy. A plan was developed to improve the reporting system for school violence cases to ensure better access to data. And a virtual course was developed by the Ministry of Education and UNICEF on the positive discipline of how to parent, how to be better caretakers, healthcare workers, and educators as well. And lastly, the implementation of a diploma course on comprehensive adolescent development successfully advanced 85 participants. Before I move on to what continued partnership could look like, I'd love to highlight our program visit to Peru. Day one of our visit began at the San Isidro School in the peri-urban area of Ucayali called Pucallpa. As you can see from the photo on your left, we were initially greeted at the school by young adolescents who performed a traditional folk dance of the region for us. And if you look at the photo on the right, you'll see our Zonta delegation with an adolescent girl and boy. The girl's name is Reina, and she's the school's mayor, who spoke to us of the importance of adolescent girls being included, empowered, and playing leadership roles for the school. In this photo, you can also see the school principal, and he spoke to us of the importance of teachers and educators trained on violence prevention. From here, we went inside of a classroom with younger students. And this was actually quite an emotional day for some of us. The younger students showcased how they had learned through an educational campaign, how they use superhero masks as an incentive to raise awareness about violence prevention. I just want to pause and say that one of the young girls went up to Sharon and she said that she reminded her of her grandmother and just asked her if she could give her a hug. And it made all of us tear up and get very emotional. From here, we then met with the Superstar Talents Group. This is a group created for and by adolescents, completely on their own. The group of adolescents are working with the school principals, teachers, and psychologists to really create change within their communities. And you'll hear a little bit later from Sharon. These adolescents are so empowered, so confident, and so full of life that when you see them and hear them talk, it makes you want to just do more in whatever capacity you can. The picture on the right is Zonta again in front of the health center sign, where because of Zonta's support, adolescents come here regularly to receive psychosocial support, healthcare support, screening, and vaccinations. And you can see that Zonta's logo is included on this sign and at the health clinic. Day two. Day two was one of the most challenging and I'd say most adventurous days that we had. And this is how it began. So as you can see, Sharon is being supported as she makes her way onto this very tiny boat, which we then took up the Ucayali River for a 2-hour journey on this river. 2 hours on this tiny boat with a very small bathroom. This is us in front of the boat. From here, we started making our way on motor car tuk-tuk into the rural indigenous community towards Masisea. This is, as I mentioned earlier, the deep Peruvian rainforest. Let's just say this was successful for about the first five minutes or so. Would you agree, Sharon? Yeah, 5 minutes. So the tuk-tuks could not go any farther. Typically, this is Peru's dry season. So the plan was to go on tuk-tuk. But because of climate change, it rained quite heavily the day and 2 days before. And so this is what we did for the next 45 minutes through the jungle, the mud, the uneven pathway, and the 95 degrees Fahrenheit sweltering heat. This journey truly showcased that UNICEF does whatever it takes to reach every child. And I might sound biased, but seeing our staff in action really continued to inspire me to be here today and continue doing the work that I do. And Zonta was able to witness and experience this firsthand. Once we finally got to the Masisea community, The community members shared the challenges that they continue to face with us. At the Indigenous Community School, educators were so grateful and thankful for the loudspeakers that Zonta provided for them. Because of these loudspeakers during the pandemic, they were able to continue their education and raise awareness about the pandemic within their community. We ended our day at the Masisaya Health Center with the Indigenous adolescents who come to this clinic. It was vastly different than being in the peri-urban areas of Pucallpa the first day. Access is much more difficult for this community. Resources are still extremely slim, and the work has only just begun. The young woman on the left in the black, Noelia, spoke to us about how happy she was to have a space for her to meet with like-minded peers, where she feels supported by psychologists and healthcare workers, and where she can talk about issues that she doesn't feel comfortable speaking to her own parents about. So as you can see, we're just at the cusp of making a difference for adolescent girls in Peru. Should Zonta continue to support this project, the project would scale support to rural and Indigenous adolescent girls in not just 2, but 4 key regions of Peru. The impact will target strengthening health systems with an emphasis on boosting healthcare workers' ability to provide the much needed mental health support that they need to adolescents. The program will equip adolescent girls with important sexual and reproductive health information. Young parents will be counseled on how to avoid a second pregnancy. And finally, the UNICEF team will collaborate with community institutions, including schools, to prevent violence against young people. This is what the impact of your support could look like. Health services will be strengthened to reach 50,364 adolescents, of which 24,829 are girls. So this is what the next phase of support could look like. Before I conclude, I know I've spoken quite a bit, I want to share a brief snippet of Sharon speaking to the impact of what she saw in Peru.
Things that we saw yesterday and today that show the impact of what Zonta has in our program here in Peru. And today we saw the area where the children were outside learning, using the loudspeakers and the microphones so they could continue their education, which we know is very important when you have a situation like we've had with the pandemic. But also we see the expanding healthcare facilities where the adolescents can go and how they're expanding the care. And that is so important too, because it's not just the formal education, it's also the life skills, it's the health education, it's that comprehensive program. And we saw so many impacts of what we are doing here and the enthusiasm from the adolescents. It is just heartwarming to see that enthusiasm, and they would come up and hug us. And so I know I speak for all of Zonta that I was speaking that we could see truly the impact of what our contribution is to this program. And all of us who went on the trip, there were many times there was tears in our eyes and hearing about the situations and that. But I think, Monsi, one of the things that was new to me when we went there and talked to some of the girls was how many of the families are in migration, and how the girls may be in one part of Peru and their mother and father in another part. And so the family structure is not always there, but then, you know, the parents will come back. They're looking at their economic conditions. But so many of the children are being raised by aunts, uncles, grandparents, and they're longing for their parents, but the situation there doesn't allow it. So that was just one of the other things that added to my learning about Peru and what our situation is there in helping the girls and adolescents. And it was just, like I said, it was a heartwarming to know that we are there making a difference.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Manzi. This project is also proposed to continue in the 2022-2024 biennium. Do we have a motion? I recognize President-elect Uda.
I am Ute Scholz, President-elect of Zonta International and Zonta's Foundation for Women. I move to accept adolescent girls' health and protection in Peru, a project in cooperation with UNICEF USA for the 22-24 biennium to be funded by a grant of $750,000 from the Zonta Foundation for Women International Service Fund.
Is there a second to the motion?
I am Fernanda Gallo-Freschi, Director of Zonta International and Zonta Foundation for Women, and I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded to accept the Adolescent Girls' Health and Protection in Peru, a project in cooperation with UNICEF USA for the 2022-2024 biennium to be funded by a grant of $750,000 from the Zonta Foundation for Women International Service Project. President-elect, as the maker of the motion, you have the right to speak to the motion first.
It's a pleasure for me, President Sharon. You saw the wonderful pictures. You heard what Sharon said, what she reported, and the other participants on the site visit. What else shall I say? Let us give them a chance to continue in the next biennium to really run and develop and protect women and girls in Peru.
I see no one else at the mics. Are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
You have your machine? Remember, press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Please vote now.
Yeah. I don't say anything when
99.7% yes, 0.3% no. 1,047 yes, 3 no. There is a majority in favor and the motion is adopted. The next project is the Global Program to End Child Marriage. Please welcome back to the stage Nankali. She will speak more broadly about child marriage and how specifically over the last 2 years.
Thank you very much, Sharon. The first time I attended the convention was in Japan, and that voting was very nerve-wracking. I must say, you're kind of watching it and saying, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" But thank you so much. So I'm back again this time to talk specifically about the global program to end child marriage, which is being implemented by UNICEF and UNFPA. So just a quick snapshot of where the program is being implemented. 12 countries who are receiving direct program implementation support. Those countries are in Africa, in the Middle East, and in South Asia as well. In addition to the 12 countries who receive direct program implementation, And I should be clear, direct program implementation means that they're actually receiving financial support. That's 12 countries. Then there are an additional 28 countries who receive technical support, meaning that if there's any ideas or questions that they might have around child marriage, we take the knowledge that we have from the 12 countries and we're able to share that with other countries as well. And in addition, we're also open to receiving the same knowledge and support from other countries as well. 112 countries receive knowledge sharing activities. It was great during the break to hear from a number of Zonta members who are saying that they've been seeing the webinars, they've been seeing the products that are coming out of the global program. So we're always trying to ensure that, and part of the feedback we've been having is not to have an exclusive group of 12 countries, but to share that knowledge as widely, as possible. We've been fortunate in the context of the global program to have 8 donors, of which, of course, Zonta is one of them. Across those 12 countries, in the morning I talked about, earlier on, talked about 650 million child brides globally. In those 12 countries, we have 303 million. So almost half of the 650 million child brides are actually residing across the 12 countries. What is it that the global program does for them? We have, kind of 6 key strategies, and, some of you might already have seen them, and some of these things I've already talked about earlier on, but please allow me to come back in again. One is intensive support to marginalized girls. This morning you saw Sahada. These are the type of girls who we're able to support. And increasingly, we're trying to ensure that we don't just reach all girls, but reach those who are particularly vulnerable. And to date, we've reached 2.6 million girls who've been participating in life skills training or comprehensive sexuality education. Another outcome that we have is around enabling family and community environment. And so we're trying to ensure that we not only reach Sahada, but reach the family that she comes from and also the broader community. And to that extent, 16 million community members have been engaged in dialogues on child marriage and more broadly around gender equality. Another outcome that we're working on within the context of the global program is around strengthening systems. One of the things that I talked about earlier on is about how we can ensure that we have systems that adolescent girls can confidently be able to engage in. For example, an adolescent girl has got to be able to engage in school. She's got to feel safe to go within that environment. She's got to be in a school where she can, relate, have other girls whom she's engaging with, and have things like female teachers, which makes her more likely to go back to school. To that extent, over 6,000 service delivery points have been provided for adolescent girl-friendly services. Poverty remains a key driver in terms of child marriage. We know that many families are being pushed towards child marriage because of poverty-related issues. And because of that, we've had 53 partnerships established for social protection. And what do I mean by social protection? For example, cash transfer programs, economic empowerment programs, to ensure that these families who are facing these type of pressures, and more so over the last 2 years in the context of COVID, have some sort of relief, some sort of, support, so that they don't have to take on these negative coping mechanisms. The laws and policies remain up front and center for us. And as we shared, most of the countries where we're working in now, out of the 12, have policies, laws, and plans in place. These are not only at national level, but now we also have 99 subnational action plans and 16 legal instruments. The subnational plans are very important, as most people would know, not only to have national plans of action, but to try and get as close as possible to the girl at community level, so that she has the necessary protection in order for her to grow up to be a productive citizen. Finally is data and evidence. And, as I said, many of you have been a part of the webinars that we have. Many of you are accessing, the videos, the different products that we have, including the research pieces that we continue to generate and to share within the context of the program and beyond about what's actually working in terms of ending child marriage. The risk factors that we continue to face, and I think we've already spoken about that earlier on, COVID-19, conflict, climate change continue to come in the way of all of these outcomes that we'd like to be able to achieve. But one of the things that I'd love to be able to share with everyone is how we've adapted the program to these risks that we have there. So for example, if I might share very quickly on COVID-19, one of the things that we've done is to have a lot of the services that we provide, become much more mobile to reach out to vulnerable households. We have a lot more, virtual initiatives. So for example, education is being issued out to girls through their phones, through televisions, etc., in order to respond to the challenges that we've had in the context of COVID. So the program continues to recognize the risks that are out there and to adapt to them as well. Another challenge that I'd like to quickly share is around climate change. And I know that I shared earlier on today that I met a colleague or a Zontian who was talking about setting up a climate change group within Zonta. I want to share the experience of the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia. We've seen over the past, I would say 8 months now, that they're facing a drought. And one of the things that the global program has done, as families are having to move from the areas where they live because of climate change, is to shift the program to move it towards where families are living. And so the program becomes mobile in those environments. These are families who are pastoralists, who have cattle, who initially started off by selling off their cattle. But once, that was no longer an option for them, they were starting to adopt negative coping mechanisms such as child marriage. And so what the program is doing is to understand that these families are under stress, to follow the families who are taking their cattle to rivers and provide the services near water sources where the families can be able to access water, but also to have education systems that shift towards where the families have moved as well, who have moved towards too. And so the program is adapting to the environment or the stresses that families are facing. We met Sahada in the last presentation. Now I'd like to introduce you to Shreya. Shreya will not be joining us. I'll just be talking about Shreya. She's also part of the program and she's based in India. Shreya is a young girl and student from Jaipur, India, where the program is being implemented. She's a part-time volunteer with a non-governmental organization, Jivan Ashram Sanshadhan, which implements a missed call radio program, a cloud telephony-based radio channel that addresses issues of adolescents' well-being, empowerment, and health, which is being complemented by a child helpline. In June last year, Shreya got to know about Sapna, a girl who has to be married off to a 30-year-old man. Sapna's father had taken a loan from the man's family, and when he couldn't repay it, the man's father said he could write off the debt if Sapna married his son. Knowing about the child helpline, Shreya took immediate action to call, and the police swung into action and stopped the wedding, allowing Sapna to continue to go to school. This telephone-based radio channel and many other helplines that we've had, particularly during the context of COVID, where we know many of our services have been disrupted, have been particularly key in terms of identifying when cases of child marriage were taking place and being able to come in and support girls like Sapna and support girls like Shreya to be able to come in and report cases and to get responses and prevent child marriage. The challenge for us as we go forward is how can we take that to the scale that is required for many other girls who are facing similar challenges. A bit more information about the challenges and the program adaptations that we've done, especially because of this triple crisis that we've been talking about. We've seen disruption of services due to the pandemic. So one of the things we're doing is, as I'd already mentioned, harnessing digital solutions to maintain engagement with girls. In Zambia, we've been buying phones for girls to be able to carry on to communicate with other girls, to be able to access education systems, to be able to know where service points are, such as health services that they require for themselves. We've also been able to use digital solutions to mobilize local partners to ensure availability of services and information. But as we look at this as a key solution in terms of ensuring that the program continues, we know that there are many issues in terms of digital engagement. For example, many girls, and particularly girls who are coming from poor families or from rural families, do not have phones, do not have televisions, do not have radios. In many of these families as well, the phone, as an example, belongs to the father, and the father decides when or where or who is going to be able to access it. And so those are amongst the challenges that we faced as we look at these solutions, we know the issues that come around them as well, and we're trying to be able to overcome them. Increasingly, of course, is the issue around being able to get real-time data, and particularly in the context of COVID, where services were disrupted, community members were not doing the work that they needed to be able to do, and we lost contact with many of the girls in order to be able to know in real time what is it that's going on with them and how can we stay on top of their lives and the risks that they're facing. We, of course, continue to face challenges in terms of conflict, climate change, and COVID. And within that context, we continue to do research to understand how these three key risks are coming together to make girls more and more vulnerable. And at the moment, we already have a lot of information as to what it is that is happening to the girls. But we need to continue to learn from that, and we need to do more and to do better as we go forward. Our priorities in terms of going forward for 2022 and 2023, as we face these many challenges, number one is to deal with gender transformative programming. I know that within Zonta, there's lots of gender equality advocates, and so I don't need to say perhaps too much about this, but just to say that initially when we designed this program, we were talking about just ending child marriage. But for those of you who are experts around issues of gender equality, you know that it's not just about child marriage. This is about achieving gender equality. And so there's a lot more that needs to be done within that. And so I was so glad earlier on when the question came up about the role of men and boys, because they're key in terms of actually achieving that that transformation that is required so that women and girls do not face these challenges at community level. We will continue to work around adolescent girls' empowerment and access to services. You also, Sahada, she's one of many other girls who will continue to ensure that they access life skills, that they're able to carry on to be in school, and that they're able to be empowered to make decisions about their lives. We will continue to deal with social and behavior change programming. And within this space, we're going to work with influencers, religious leaders, traditional leaders, political leaders, those who influence, and look at how to be able to get them to use their influence in a positive way for adolescent girls. And then we will continue to learn. I think this one will never stop. As the world changes, we know that even just today, what the world was 2 years ago and what it is today is completely different in the lives of adolescent girls. And so it's important for us to continue to learn how the world is impacting on girls and how we can do better for them. Our target by 2023 is to reach 5.5 million girls. For Zonta, we look, to the continued partnership, and if you go ahead with us, we call on you to continue to being advocates to ending child marriage within your community. We call on you to continue to raise awareness on child marriage through social media and other platforms. And in the longer term, we call on you to continue to engage on issues related to gender equality and the achievement of SDG 5.3. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nankali. This project is also proposed to continue in the 2022-2024 biennium. Do we have a motion? I recognize President-elect Uta.
I'm Ute Scholz, President-elect of Zonta International and Zonta's Foundation for Women. I move to accept Global Program to End Child Marriage, a project in cooperation with UNFPA and UNICEF USA for the 22-24 biennium to be funded by a grant of $1.2 million from the Zonta Foundation for Women International Service Fund.
Is there a second to the motion?
En tant que secrétaire, Zonta International and Zonta Foundation for Women Director, I second this motion.
It has been moved and seconded to accept the Global Program to End Child Marriage, a project in cooperation with UNFPA and UNICEF USA for the 2022-2024 biennium to be funded by a grant of 1.2 million US dollars from the Zonta Foundation for Women International Service Fund. As maker of the motion, President-elect Uda, you have the right to speak.
Thank you, Madam
First.
President. It's still a long way to end child marriage and forced marriage. It is harm to children. It's violence against girls. And we are on a good way. And especially because we also are advocating against child marriage in our clubs and district levels. So I recommend to continue with this project, and we saw how well it is adjusted to the needs that we have due to COVID, also to climate change. And I'm very happy that men are more involved, because we cannot talk about early child marriage when we don't talk about the other part of the marriage. And this is necessary that men get aware and involved in this project. Thank you.
I see a speaker at the pro mic.
Madam President, I'm Samira Salmon, President of the Club Marie de Montpellier in France, District 13. I want to support this program, particularly because I had a son when I was 16. And the director of the school told me, you won't be able to raise a child and study. It's so hard for a 16-year-old girl to impose herself, her dream. I would like to see a campaign telling the girl in this situation, you can success, not giving up your dreams. I want a campaign. Like we said, Zonta says no. Now I want a campaign who say to the girls, yes. Zonta say yes for education. Zonta say yes for help women. Zonta say yes for health. Zonta say yes for school. Thank you very much.
I recognize a speaker at the pro mic.
President Sharon, this is Naradi Kiangsari, past International Nominating Committee and also past District 17 Governor. I'd like to support the motion that President-elect Ute made today about ending child marriage. I think it's very important that we emphasis on this one, because the child marriage not only damage the physical of the girls, but also mentally abused as well. And no one should be in that situation. Suppose if it's someone you know or your daughter, you wouldn't let that happen at all. So I think for my more than 30 years being a Zontians, I have seen that Zonta have been supporting this ending child marriage for a long, long time. And there's a lot more to do. So I think we have to really continuing doing this. I'd like to support the motion that President-elect Uta made. Thank you.
I recognize the speaker at the pro mic.
Yes, Mrs. President. My name is Pablo Francisco Droira, Buenos Aires, Argentina. I want to support this program, and I want to congratulate on this program very much. However, what I would like to ask you is if it is possible for this program to be extended, especially to Argentina, because Argentina is going through a very critical moment, not only by poverty, not only by corruption, but also economical crisis. So I would like for you to consider if it is possible to extend this program to Argentina. Thank you very much.
I see no one else at the mics. Are we ready to vote on this project? Please press 1 for yes and 2 for no. Please vote now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The vote is 99.9% and zero yes and 0.1 no. The vote is 1048 yes and 1 no. There's a majority in favor. So the motion is adopted. The last project is our Let Us Learn Madagascar. Please welcome back to the stage Monzi, who will share the progress that has been made in the Madagascar project this biennium.
Thank you, Sharon. In Madagascar, overlapping humanitarian disasters have upended life for children and their families across the country. Over the past 2 years, 3 different emergencies have hit Madagascar. Flooding in the north, prolonged drought in the south, and disease outbreaks, including COVID-19 in all 22 regions of Madagascar. The situation has been especially concerning in the southern region of Madagascar, as this area is highly vulnerable to extreme weather events, including those exacerbated by climate change. These emergencies have affected the education sector and threatened to reverse some of the hard-won gains that have been made for children. These crises will have immediate, long-term, and intergenerational effects. A study conducted in October 2020 reported that more than 75% of school children either dropped out or had difficulty going to school because of the drought. To give you a snapshot of the economic situation, in the latest global monitoring report from the World Bank, ranking poverty rates among the countries with the highest poor population, Madagascar occupies first place, with a poverty rate of 81.8% among its estimated 25 million people. 91% of the Malagasy population live on less than US $2 a day. This means that 3 out of 4 children live in this extreme poverty. That's almost 8.6 million children. 8.6 million. This poverty and weak infrastructure is exacerbated by a high vulnerability to natural disasters, mainly given the nation's reliance on agriculture. Around half of Madagascar's population is under the age of 18. However, children and women suffer disproportionately in Madagascar, and these factors need to be taken into account and addressed to ensure a gender equitable approach so girls are not left behind. We know that poverty and education are linked. More than 905,000 children in Madagascar are out of school. Despite an overall increase in primary school enrollment in the last year, about 30% of children drop out after the first grade. The learning environment is also a challenge. 80% of teachers are unqualified to teach. The curriculum needs improvement, and learning materials are often not in a language used by teachers and students. Adolescent girls, we know, are particularly vulnerable and often excluded and denied their rights. So what are some of the barriers that we're addressing together that prevent girls' retention in school? As you can see from this slide, all of the above are barriers that Zonta and UNICEF Madagascar are working together to tackle, such as child marriage, child labor, and so on. In addition to the already existing barriers that girls face, COVID-19 and associated restrictions such as school closures and travel limitation delayed the implementation of certain activities. The school year in 2022 is expected to start in September, which is earlier than normal. Typically, the start date in Madagascar is in October. So this month will be used to recover some time lost due to school closure. In the biennium of 2020 to 2022, Zonta chose to continue this program with the following two targets. The first, to ensure that more children, particularly girls who drop out at higher rates in secondary school, have access to post-primary education and are supported to stay in school. The second, to strengthen the capacity of Madagascar's education system to offer quality teaching, thereby improving students' learning outcomes. Actually, I want to go back to this other slide. I want to highlight that a component of impact that Zonta was particularly helpful in was the implementation and continuity of 64 children's clubs. These have been created and supported with Zonta's support through the start of the project. And this essentially includes training on child rights and child protection. For the past 2 years, this included training for 14 teachers and 112 students, 55 of which were girls. The safe space and the psychosocial support provided to children through these children's clubs is particularly relevant now, especially in the current context of drought, food insecurity, and COVID-19. So with your support, girls in Madagascar are overcoming barriers such as poverty and gender-based violence and learning foundational skills in safer, gender-equitable environments. So let me share with you exactly what your impact has been. To start with, through your support, UNICEF was able to complete the construction of 2 classrooms, reaching 80 children. Additionally, 2 gender-segregated toilet blocks, which provides a safe space for menstrual hygiene management, was built. And additionally, trees, plants, and a sports field were also built. During the summer of 2021, UNICEF reached a total of 1,200 out-of-school children, 57% of which were girls, with catch-up classes, school supplies, thus exceeding the original target of 1,050. Funding from Zonta has supported conditional cash transfers for 800 children, 59% of which are girls. Cash transfers are given to the female head of household, and these help families meet their basic food, water, health, and education costs, and also prevent negative poverty-related coping mechanisms such as child marriage and labor. The conditions attached ensure that children are enrolled in school and also provide the basic household needs to help girls stay enrolled in school. 18 beneficiaries of the cash transfer program participated and led more than 100 community workshops with members in raising awareness on essential family practices. And this was done through sports and cultural and radio events. In total, 23 regional teachers and 122 lower secondary school principals were trained. This exceeds the original target of 100 school principals. 742 science teachers benefited from pedagogical training, and these trainings cover topics such as physics, mathematics, and natural sciences. So as you've just heard, disasters driven by climate shock and environmental degradation have a profound impact on Madagascar. Madagascar is a world biodiversity hotspot, with 80 to 90% of its flora and fauna found nowhere else on the Earth. UNICEF sees the role of children and adolescents, especially girls, as critical to creating sustainable, positive changes for the environment in Madagascar. Continued progress is needed within Madagascar to support the women and girls. To that end, I stand before you today, asking Zonta to vote to sustain its support to Madagascar for $500,000 through a new project focusing on supporting girls and a generation of children and adolescents by providing environmental education in Madagascar. This new project will enable girls to learn in a safe and inclusive environment and empower them to take action to change and to build climate resilient communities. This project will reach at least 1,000 students, 540 of which are girls. 1,500 teachers will be trained on menstrual health, hygiene, water and conservation, and environmental education. 750 teachers at 700 primary schools will receive training on climate and environment, clean school environment, including tree and flower planting, and the development of disaster risk plans to enable learning to continue during natural disasters. And also a school competition for the best environmental action plan will take place and prizes will be distributed. Thank you.
Thank you, Manzi. As Manzi shared, it is proposed that Zonta and UNICEF will continue partnering in Madagascar. However, the project will shift to focus on climate change. Do we have a motion? I recognize President-elect Uta.
I'm Ute Scholz, President-elect of Zonta International and Zonta's Foundation for Women. And I move to accept Engaging Girls on Climate Change in Madagascar, a project in cooperation with UNICEF USA for the 22-24 biennium, to be funded by a grant of $500,000 from the Zonta Foundation for Women International Service Fund.
Is there a second to the motion?
Ina Wesseling, Director, Zonta International and Zonta Foundation for Women. I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded to accept Engaging Girls on Climate Change in Madagascar, a project in cooperation with UNICEF USA for the 2022-2024 biennium to be funded by a grant of $500,000 from the Zonta Foundation for Women International Service Fund. President-elect Uta, you are the maker of the
Thank you,
motion.
President Sharon. I think the time is ripe that we focus on the impact of climate change on the lives of women worldwide. Climate change is in everyone's mouth, but many people don't talk about climate change and gender equality or inequity. In many parts of the world, especially in our part, the carbon footprint of men is much bigger than the carbon footprint of women due to different jobs, bigger cars, other life, standard of life, going outside to work, traveling more for business. And on the other side, on this little tiny island in the south of Africa, women have to suffer from the impact of climate change. They have to walk sometimes for hours to go to get drinking water. When I had the chance to go to Madagascar to have a site visit at the Early Child Marriage, at the Let Us Learn project 2 years ago in the Centennial Biennium, we went to places in Madagascar in the south where there has been no rain since 10 years. Just imagine what that means for a woman who has to feed the children and who has to get water and who is working on the field. So we have to have the duty to focus on climate change and the impact on women worldwide. And I think it is also for us as Zonta International a big chance for the future to get a profile on this issue and to combine our advocacy activities on club and district level, also on climate change, with gender equality and gender questions that are interesting for us and which is part of our mission as Zonta International. So this is why I suggest to continue with a project in Madagascar with a well-experienced partnership with UNICEF USA. So we can easily continue with the partners. There is a built-up connection, but we change the focus on the very important point of climate change or climate impact, which is necessary for our future, for everyone's future. Thank you, Thank you very much.
I recognize the speaker at the pro mic.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm Harriet Lonka from Vantaa 2 Club in District 20, Helsinki metropolitan area. And I would want to, of course, second and support this program. But at the same time, I would want to point out, which was an excellent aspect from the Madagascar, that it holds a great, unique biodiversity environment. We were having a workshop the other day where we were considering new ways of taking into account these biodiversity and climate change aspects in our fundraising activities and in all our work as Zontians. I would just want to point out and stress that we not to separate these two extremely important aspects, climate change and biodiversity decline. I hope we can understand that these form an extremely important combination for our livelihood, for women and the whole globe. Thank you.
Are you wanting to speak?
Yes.
I recognize the speaker at the pro mic.
Hello, I'm Leonore von Falkenhausen from Zonta Club Höxter, District 29. I think it's a very important project, and especially the focus on environmental issues is, I think, one of the most important things Zonta has to look at in the future, because if the world changes and nobody can live in it anymore, women are the first ones who suffer from it. We have seen that in all presentations, that migration because of climate change, poverty, all the terrible things that result from it are having an even bigger impact on the lives of women as they had before. And if we think what wonderful women do support the climate movement, like Greta Thunberg or Luisa Neubauer in Germany, I think it's the women who really can or should or have to put these issues in front. And I really hope that this first project that has directly environmental issues in it is a model for further projects and perhaps for the communication of Zonta worldwide in the next years, because time is really running, and this is the most dangerous thing that is in the world right now, besides war and COVID. But I think climate is first. So I can only say wonderful that it's in the Zonta projects implemented, and go on with it. Thank you.
Are we ready to vote? So please press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Please vote now.
Yeah.
The vote is 98.3% yes, 1.7% no. And the vote of 1,030 yes, 18 no votes. There is a majority in favor and the motion is adopted. This concludes the presentation of our 2020-2022 international service projects and the plans for the 2022-2024 and the voting to confirm those projects for the next biennium. We will now take our lunch break. We are running late. Please be back here by 1:20 if at all possible. We are a half hour late.
No, I don't. Three. Oh, shit.